Hello, everybody. We've got a show that promises to be at least mildly interesting for your listening and watching enjoyment. I'm your host, Jared Correa. I'm the CEO of Red Cave Law Firm Consulting. For the Monologue, I'm returning to my travelogue series. In the interview, we're talking with Beau Atkins of Evolve Family Law, who is the king of Saskatchewan. In the counter program, Beau rolled up on the Wheel of Justice, but with a twist. It's the Wheel of Justice, Canada edition. You know what they say, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Well, I guess except for this, because I'm going to talk about it right now. Welcome back to our travelogue series, Travels with Jared in Search of America. This is chapter 51, Travels with Jared in Search of America. Viva Las Vegas. The last and currently only time I went to Las Vegas was back in 2002. I'll be going out again this year. More on that in a moment. Vegas is cool and all. Well, it's not cool, it's hot, but it's not like I'm salivating to go back out there again, necessarily. I don't gamble. The vibes are okay. Vegas can just be relentless and exhausting like New York City with more lights and noise and STDs. Now, my understanding is that Vegas tourism has taken a dip since the pandemic, so maybe it won't be as loud, but the big ticket items are still there, like the fountains at the Bellagio, and they've added some more stuff that's of general interest, like the Sphere, where I'm planning on attending the show. I'll report back on how things go, and maybe I can get keyed up by talking about the last time I went to Vegas. So let's go back in time. 2002. Remember it well. Post 9/11. So we were beginning the long slide into the shittiest American century, but we weren't at like Trump actively destroying the country every single day stage. So in retrospect, things were a bit better than they are now. I was in my second year of law school, and my friend Ethan had just moved out to San Diego for a job. So me and my friends from college decided to go out to visit him. Because I had no money, we had to go out on Southwest Airlines, which still then had general admission seating, which blows. And which is why I've never flown Southwest even once again in my life. I just want a fucking seat with a number on it. Is that too much to ask? Now, despite the fact that I was already a veteran of air travel at this point in my life, I made a crucial error pre-flight when I inexplicably decided to eat an entire buffalo chicken calzone prior to embarking on a cross-country flight with no layovers. If you've ever had a buffalo chicken calzone, or can imagine what one would be like, that was just a terrible and harrowing choice. I don't know if there is such a thing as immediate diarrhea. It may be that my diet is just that terrible, but I spent more of that flight in the plane bathroom than I did in my seat. Each time, I was just blowing out the facilities, groaning, the whole nine. Lines backing up in the aisles. Not how you want to start a Vegas trip, but maybe how some of them end. But I guess on the upside, by the time the plane landed, I had evacuated my bowels. I had no more to give. Though the people in the luggage carousel were not very pleasant to me. I had built a poor reputation by that time. This was even worse than that time I got food poisoning from an undercooked bison burger I ate at the National Museum of the American Indian in Washington, D.C. Those motherfuckers got me good. But the museum was otherwise lovely, and I suppose I may have deserved that due to my shithead ancestors, Trail of Tears, you know. So we arrive in San Diego, and San Diego 20 plus years ago is not what San Diego is today. This was before the airport and Petco Park were moved to downtown. San Diego is much fucking nicer now. But it was still a military town, and there were a lot of excellent dive bars available, which is always good. Plus, the 2002 World Cup was taking place at this time, June of that year, and this was the United States' best run in the tournament since the inaugural World Cup when they placed third. I will see how they end up this year. As of this recording, they're doing pretty well. They made the knockout stage. That meant we got to be up at odd hours, occasionally drunk, watching games broadcast from South Korea. The U.S. team lost due to a controversial call against Germany, which committed a handball violation that was not called, and they lost that quarterfinal game 1-0, but that happened after I get back. Probably for the best. In between taking shits, drinking beers and waters, and watching soccer, our gaggle of 20-something dipshits, was nevertheless fairly erudite, and I wanted to go see the Mark Twain statue at the IHOP in Fenton Marketplace. Yes, there's a Mark Twain statue at the International House of Pancakes in San Diego. That's not weird, okay? I do that shit all the time. There are educational opportunities everywhere if you just look around. Anyway, after we had checked out the statue and we're headed back to the car, we ran into a few dudes who looked like they might be homeless and who invited us to what they were referring to as a pipe organ concert in the local park, which I thought was odd. They were pretty insistent about it in a way that made things awkward. And since this was pre-internet and pre-smartphone, I couldn't confirm whether or not there was actually a pipe organ concert going on in the park that night. But I had my doubts. It was going to be pretty late for a pipe organ concert and possibly bumping up against noise restrictions. And the logistics seemed kind of difficult to pull off to me. So I want to say that we had been invited to an outdoor gay orgy because the pipe organs referenced sounded a lot like they were trying to talk about dicks. That's my working theory, at least, given all the context clues. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I was actually flattered to be invited. The avowed purpose of our trip was to go to see the Red Sox and Padres play at the old Jack Murphy Stadium, where the San Diego, now Los Angeles Chargers also then played. I think it was called Qualcomm Stadium at that point. But it was one of those cavernous, cookie-cutter, all-purpose multi-sport stadiums that were built in the late 1960s everywhere in every municipality. These stadiums needed 70,000 or so seats for football, but let's just say that the Padres were not packing that stadium full in the early 2000s, even though they had been to the World Series in 1998. Shouts to Trevor Hoffman. So, my friend Jeff and I decided to climb to the top of the stadium and sit in the last row where no one else was. That seemed to be the key to getting on SportsCenter then, sitting alone in an entire stadium section, waiting for the pipe organ concert to start. But we got kicked out before we could attract the attention of the camera, sadly. I wouldn't say that the game was compelling. I don't remember who won, and I'm not even interested in looking it up. But because there were very few fans in attendance, many of whom were Red Sox fans anyway, I did get Carlos Baerga's autograph on my hat. He was a pretty good middle infielder with the Cleveland Indians before moving to the Red Sox later in his career. That was okay. But the biggest travesty was that I also got Grady Little's autograph, who 1 year later would leave Pedro Martinez in too long in Game 7 of the 2000 American League Championship Series against the Yankees, which almost caused me to weep in public in the airport in Kansas City. Fuck that guy. But despite the fact that we were out there for a Red Sox game, I think we all felt like the highlight of the trip was going to be a single night stay in Las Vegas. We got a big-ass SUV rental car, and we drove out. The drive out is mostly desert, but we did achieve a bucket list goal of mine. My friend had to go out to pee. We did the thing where he kept rolling the car forward so he didn't have any cover from passing cars. So he kept trying to waddle over to keep up with the rolling vehicle. Pissed all over himself. It was fucking glorious. Everything I would have hoped it would have been. Arriving in Vegas, I just remember there was so goddamn hot. We stayed at New York, which was probably the cheapest option as to why we were there. And that was a hotel/casino with a New York City theme. One thing that is actually amazing about this hotel is that they have a roller coaster, the Big Apple coaster, that encircles the building. The roller coaster was pretty cool, but because you're leaving the air-conditioned casino through a hole leading to the outside to do the whole roller coaster thing, as soon as you leave the building, you shoot out on the roller coaster car. It's like a wall of heat. Like you just got smacked in the face with that desert sauce. I think I almost passed out, honestly. That was maybe the most interesting thing that happened at the casino. As I mentioned, I don't gamble. Unless you count the fact that I ate a bowl of clam chowder while drunk at the casino restaurant at 3 a.m. But I've always talked about my bowel movements enough already on this podcast. And we're only in the first segment, so the remainder of that story is best left untold. The harrowing version of our Vegas trip, however, was trying to find a strip club. I'm not a strip club guy either. My vice is basically buying too many hats, but more on that in a moment. There's a million strip clubs in Las Vegas, but my friend Jeff said a work colleague of his was out there and that he knew the spot to go to. So we meet up with him, and he's basically a carbon copy of Belky Bartakamos from Perfect Strangers. the quintessential 1980s fish out of water sitcom, which was delightful in its own right. But after we walked up and down the strip with this random dude for about 3 hours, sweating our asses off, it was pretty clear that this guy did not have a connect. So we had to abandon him to his proclivities, whatever those might be, because they were definitely not knowing strip club owners. Since there was no Google available to us, we had to ask a cab driver, no Uber either, about where to go. And he suggested a place called the Spearmint Rhino, which I checked and is still open. It seemed to me to be like the McDonald's of strip clubs. This was my first, and I think still only time in a strip club. And it was awkward, as you might expect. Just dudes drinking and trying to have normal conversations while naked women dance around them. Totally normal circumstances. My friends decided that it would be funny to get me a lap dance, and that was a waste of money. While this girl was putting in the requisite amount of effort, I was interested to know what her future plans were. Turned out she was in community college, and I encouraged her to stay in school and get her degree. My friends were not pleased with that. But maybe I'm the reason Misty is so into electrical engineering right now. You never know. Vegas is fucking debilitating, even if you don't gamble and talk to strippers about their educational plans instead. 48 hours in Vegas is about the most I can comfortably do. So we're all hungover. We smell like shit, and we decide to drive back. We were supposed to go visit my great uncle in Thousand Oaks, California, who had made us mustard sandwiches for lunch as a joke, because I used to eat mustard sandwiches when I was younger. And yes, that's exactly what you're thinking it is. Literally a sandwich with mustard on it and nothing else, a condiment. I wouldn't say I was wealthy in the law school era. Anyway, we never made it because we got lost in Long Beach. Not ideal. All those mustard sandwiches, baking in the sun, going to waste. But it was probably for the best for those traveling with me on the plane on the way back to the East Coast. Though we did get to fire up some Snoop on the CD player while actually driving through the LBC, which was pretty lit. So you may be asking yourself, why am I now returning to Vegas? You seem to have such a good time before. Reunion with the old homies? Nah, we're all old and saddled with debts and children. 8 a.m., formerly Affinipay, which launched LawPay and acquired my case, is hosting its second annual customer conference from September 22nd to the 24th at the Encore in Las Vegas. It's called Kaleidoscope. Nikki Black and I will be doing a panel on AI, plus many other speakers of note will be present, including some former and probably future guests of this very podcast. I'm not sure that the prior discussion was exactly the advertisement that 8 a.m. was looking for the conference. However, I'm sure that this event will be far less perverse and obnoxious than what I described above. You can register today and watch out for upcoming announcements, including for keynote speakers. Last year, they had Olympic gymnast Gabby Thomas. Maybe we can have some clam chowder together. Maybe not, actually. I don't know if Saskatoon is the exact opposite of Las Vegas, but it might be close. So now let's talk about how Beau Atkins and his team at Evolve Family Law have built a brand that's expanded across the entire province, and then some. Then some what? Stay tuned. Well, I've effectively run out of things to say, which is awkward because this is a podcast. I'm just going to itch my elbow, which is quite itchy. You can see where things go from here. Okay, that should do it. I feel better already. Let's interview our guest. Our guest today is Beau Atkins, the CEO of Evolve Family Law. Beau, welcome to the show, sir. How are you?
Thank you so much. I'm very good. How about yourself?
I'm great, man. We record these on a Monday, and I try to be chipper. So people always rag on me because I'm like, come on the podcast. And they're like, the wait is like 3 to 4 months. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm popular. So I just want to do a little deep dive. And I ran into you at a bar in Boston, the Cask and Flagon during Clio conference. And we started talking, and I was like, dude, I should have you on the podcast. And then I forgot about that for like 6 months. And then I messaged you, and I was like, let's do the show. And now here we are. Yeah, I feel like that's how it should be. Did I miss anything in there?
No, I think that was amazing. Okay. I mean, we've got a lot of mutual friends, and a lot of every time I'm at one of these conferences, they're like, dude, you got to meet Jared. And finally,
Wait, was that the first time we ever met in person?
That was the first
at
time we
CleoCon?
met, which is wild because we've
It's
probably
crazy.
been in the same atmosphere several times over the last half decade. But
I guess the only thing I would say is like I'm not often in Saskatoon, and I'm not throwing shade at Saskatoon. Like I've just never gotten up there. So
that's fair.
I was trying to think. Like I threw on my Pavel Bure era Canucks hat today,
I love it.
and then I
know
said to
that.
myself, like, there's no professional team in Saskatchewan, so I was at a loss. I didn't know what to do.
No,
I have no
so
Saskatchewan related sports merchandise.
we produce probably more hockey players per capita than anywhere else in Canada. Like we are
Is that true?
hockey producers, but we ship them out because we don't quite have the population to sustain it. I'm actually originally from Calgary, so I would have been a Calgary Flames hat would have been perfect. At
okay.
least it's not an Edmonton Oilers hat. That's where the rivalry
No.
is. I can live with a Canucks hat, especially Pavel Bure era.
Yes, I got to tell you, like I don't have a Calgary Flames hat, but I have an Atlanta Flames
Oh.
hat,
Okay.
which is a rarity. Let me ask you this: I'm not like the Canadian stuff. I talk to. There's a lot of Canadian people in legal. They're all very pleasant, including legal tech. So I interview a lot of Canadian people, but like I feel like you're in the real shit in Canada. Like you're like in the Midwest of Canada. We're not doing like Quebec or British Columbia bullshit. So what's it like in like the middle provinces? Is it a different vibe?
Yeah, I would say it's a lot more open to experimentation. A lot of times I tell people when you're testing with tech, and I talk a lot, I don't feel like I know that much, but I feel like I know more than enough people that they turn to
Same.
me as a bit of an example. And the one thing I always suggest is just like varnish, test in an inconspicuous area. And so we're in the middle of nowhere, and not to say we don't have the same legal constraints and regulations and all these concerns that other people do. But I think there's a lot of inconspicuous areas where we can say, hey, we're going to try this. We're going to, both in Alberta and Saskatchewan, the law societies have been great in terms of providing these sandboxes for lawyers to test and play in. And I think that's really allowed some creative and cool things to come out of the provinces.
Okay, so this is something I don't know about. Like, what has been happening in Alberta and Saskatchewan? Is it kind of like the ABS stuff going on in Arizona, in the U.S.? Like, what are you allowed to do?
Sort of, not quite that far. They've allowed non-lawyer non-lawyer services inside of the space a little bit, and a lot of it's more custom. So if I want to try something, I reach out. Like I know all the regulators, I can reach out to them. We're a province with. I signed. We've had this book that you sign when you become a lawyer. I signed
Like an actual book, like a physical
an actual
book.
book.
I love
we drive
that.
down
That's
to
great.
Regina, 2 hours. Well, wherever you are in the province, you go to Regina, go to the law society, and you sign a book. And
That's
every
fucking
lawyer,
That's like the Lord of the Rings or some shit.
it's crazy. Every lawyer has signed this book since lawyers were a thing in the province of Saskatchewan in the 1800s, late 1800s.
That's amazing.
My number was 4,982. There were I was before the 5,000th.
Oh my God.
So we don't have a lot. Like when you're
Wow.
in that small of a setting, I know most of the lawyers. If you say, hey, I know a lawyer in Saskatchewan, I'm always asking who, because chances are I actually probably may know who that is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when
that's
you're in
funny.
that small of a community, I can call my regulator and say, hey, I want to explore this thing. Would you guys have any concerns? And as you'd expect, they don't say, yeah, go ahead. They don't give a stamp of approval, but they will say, we have concerns about this part. And so that would cause us to pause and reconsider options.
I feel like that's a great way to deal with regulators.
Oh,
I think,
it's
Most of those folks are willing to have a conversation. I feel, but you're right. They're never going to be like, okay, you're good to go, whatever you want to do. But that's valuable information that you got.
Yeah, but it's not scalable. Like I recognize what I'm doing in Saskatchewan, where we've got 500 lawyers, maybe, isn't doable in New York City or basically any other place, any other city in the States where there's an abundance of lawyers, and it's just they don't have the capacity for that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Okay, so let's go back in time a little bit. You're a pretty entrepreneurial dude for an attorney. I want to talk about some of the other stuff you're doing as well, but like before you decided to take up law as a thing, like what did you do before that? In terms of jobs, in terms of education, and then we'll talk about why you decided to get into legal.
Yeah, well, so I put myself through law school working different construction jobs. One, I was a tile setter by trade when I was in Calgary. So I ran my own company doing that. Another one, not really related, office furniture. I did office furniture throughout law school. So I had a team of about 20
Like, did you we're talking like sanding it down and crating it? Like, or is this more of a factory thing?
For that, I was on site building the desk from box to completion. So I had 20 people working for me in law school. So while I'm balancing that, I had a son born in first year.
Crazy.
It was chaos, absolute chaos. And one of the things I recognized, it took me a while. It took me till about 2020. So I would have been a lawyer already for about a decade before I realized I'm entrepreneur more than I am lawyer. And I think I've spoken with a number of other lawyers who identify as entrepreneurs. And the problem is those two mindsets, frames of mind, are at loggerheads so often because as an entrepreneur, you're looking for opportunities. And that's why so many entrepreneurs can get themselves into trouble is they're looking for opportunities sort of blind to risk.
Right.
Whereas with a lawyer, you're almost blind to opportunities, just
it's the opposite.
And so I felt absolutely suffocated in the profession because I really didn't, when I was all attorney, I had this entrepreneur side of me that just wanted to get out. And it was in 2020 when I finally realized I could coexist with both in both spaces.
That's super interesting. So you feel like you leaned too heavy into the lawyer side. And do you think you were like, I want to be like what everyone else's vision of a lawyer is? Was that part of it too, or no?
I mean, I think the media does that to us. You watch Suits. How sexy is that? And even you look, Harvey Specter now he's
now spokesman for like Harvey or whatever. Yeah.
I feel like they're just perpetrating this more because it's not that sexy. I don't care where you are. The law is not as sexy as
see now you're ruining the whole vibe.
Sorry to tell you how the sausage is made, but
tile setting is interesting to me. Like that's probably more of an art form than anything else, I would think, right?
Yeah, it was like, I mean, I got a lot of satisfaction from that because you could see a job done at the end. Like there's always blemishes. You're never going to get it perfect. It comes out of the box imperfect in a lot of ways. And so I felt it was, I miss it a lot. And sometimes I actually offer to do people's tile work for free just so I can get out and get back at it because it's more of an art form. I found.
I feel like you're doing stuff with your hands and seeing a finished product. Like you don't get that satisfaction as a knowledge worker. So I'm right there with you. I feel like I would love that.
Yeah, but I've also and I talk about this often how I've borrowed a lot of the philosophies from tile setting and applied them to law. And one example of that is we do all flat fees. I've only done flat fees for about 6 years since starting Evolve. Nobody here has ever billed an hourly rate. And the analogy I use is when I was a tile setter and I did small jobs, someone would call me up, say, hey, I've got this job, come out, tell me how much it's going to cost. I would show up with a tape measure. I would run through everything, assess the where it was going to be installed, what was going to be installed, how many cuts. I'm the expert. I should know what I'm doing. And so I should be able to say, okay, I can do this job. It's going to be a couple $1,000, $2,500, whatever. And then we provide that price certainty. And I feel like too often in law, for one, I think most lawyers don't realize what they sell. They are selling certainty. They are selling peace of mind. Every single lawyer out there, in one sense, you could package it to say you are selling certainty, but then they fail at their very first opportunity to provide that when they talk about their own fees. Like, you're the expert. And people, I've had a lot of criticism or skeptics say, you're in family law. There's no way to flat fee family law. My retort is, if I can flat fee family law, you can flat fee literally any area of law. And I think that's done just by quoting as far as you can see, right? I can't see the whole file, but I can tell you how much it's going to cost from now until this next thing we do. And if something comes up in the middle, just like tile setting. So if there was a job where I'm repping off the old tile and the back substrate is all molded, well, I have to have a conversation because that's out of scope work. And so now I have to have that transparency and that conversation to say, hey, I know I said $2,500. I didn't know all this was rotten. And so I think it's the same philosophy can apply to every area of law.
Even the concept of out of scope work, I think, is foreign to a lot of lawyers, because I think they get into flat fees and they're like, oh my God, I have to do everything that comes up under this one rubric. Okay, let me ask you this, because this is interesting. So whenever I talk to lawyers about flat fees, they're always like, what about the litigation side of it? Impossible to do flat fees. How do you handle that?
Yeah, I mean, I started very litigious and I'm less litigious now. But we still do operate a litigious practice on flat fees. And sometimes we quote it by the day. So if I know for a trial, for instance, maybe my trial rate is $10,000 or $15,000 per day. And you're quoting it where, I think maybe I'm undervaluing my experience beforehand, although I only had 5-6 years as a hourly billing attorney of experience. But you quote it so that you won't lose money. And I think what a lot of lawyers don't understand is that clients will pay more for that certainty. If I were to tell a client, look, I'll charge you $700 an hour, or I'll just charge you $10,000 a day for these days of trial, and that includes the prep work leading up, and everything else is included in that, as well as our communication back and forth. So you're not going to get charged $150, $200 every time you send me an email or a phone call.
Right.
They will choose that most times, even if given that option. And so I think you can build that in. And the other reality is, I think too many lawyers are short-sighted and look at a single client. What happens if I lose money on this single client? Well, then I raise my prices and my next client isn't getting the break that this client got. That client, and where I lost, that was tuition. I just paid some tuition by not billing enough on that file. I'll bill more on the next file. And I think it's like anything. You have to build those things in.
Yeah, I like the idea of segmentation. Like, I think that makes it a lot easier for people to get their arms around it. And then this notion of trial and error, which lawyers don't like to do, because they like everything to be perfect right away. So let me ask you this, because I skipped it over this, but I'm interested to know. So you're doing tile stuff, you're building desks. You seem to be a guy who enjoys like working with your hands, and then you become a lawyer, like the least handsy job ever. So like, why and how? Like, what's the MO there?
Yeah, to be honest, I sort of just ended up on a path. I went into university wanting to be a cop, of all things.
Interesting.
Then
I'm learning a lot today. This is great.
I was midway through my criminology degree when I think the problem was I met too many cops, and I'm like, I don't want to be that, and I'm not that. I think cops, I think, for bad or for good, have an ego, and I think they need that ego
Yeah.
In a lot of cases to survive. I was like, I don't have that and I don't want that. And so then I moved, I'm like, okay, I'm in this criminology program. How can I actually change things? Like, I don't want to be a spoke in a wheel. And then I had a
Right.
class taught by a prof, legal prosecutor. And so I thought, hey, maybe I'll go to law school. Went through political science for a bit and started enjoying the law. And I just sort of ended up there. Like, there were points where I'm like, I'm making a lot of money as a tile setter. I could do this instead.
I know. That's what I was wondering. Like, you could have just done like any number of things in the trades and built a business too.
The other reality is it's never as glorious once you're in it. So I look back and I think I love doing tile. I didn't love doing tile when I was doing tile, though. I was like, I hated it. I was like, oh man, give me another job so I can get out of this. And I treated them all as stepping stones. And I think a big part of that was I lacked purpose. And that's something I've thankfully found, where I've identified my purpose, my reason for doing things is to make life better. And even when I was tile setting, that was my purpose. I wanted to make someone's life better by making their kitchen backsplash shine brighter or whatever.
Yeah.
But once I attach that sense of purpose to what I do, now I can step back and now I can have that finished product. Now I can say, okay, this client's no longer my client, but did I make life better? A little bit better? And if the answer is yes, take satisfaction and on to the next.
And now you can just tile set whenever you want.
Exactly. I do build all the desks in my own office. So.
Oh, you do? That's badass. I like that. So I was reading through some of your stuff, and you described your law firm, Evolve Family Law, as the first national family law firm in Canada. What does that mean, and why is that important?
That comes with a bit of an asterisk.
Okay.
So in
Put
Canada,
the asterisk on it.
unlike the U.S., every province, a lawyer, if I'm called to practice, I'm called in both Alberta and Saskatchewan.
You've signed the physical book. You've been called to practice.
Called to practice. But we have a national mobility agreement saying that I can practice for up to 100 days in BC and Manitoba and Ontario and the Maritime.
Oh, see, that's cool. I like that.
So,
yeah.
So there's a mobility agreement that allows us to practice in different areas. I can't practice in Quebec because it's a different beast altogether.
Interesting.
And I can't practice in the territories for whatever reason they were excluded. But so that allows us to practice to a limited extent, non-permanent extent in all those places. Well, the services we're offering are things like drafting documents and pro se assistance. I help people use AI and leverage AI. So I've created basically templates from download ChatGPT or Claude. Here's where you find it. Now start asking it these questions. By the way, you don't want to put too much of your personal information in there, but you can. I just have to have that disclaimer.
So you're talking about like clients, like help assisting clients with AI usage.
Yeah.
That's an interesting approach for a law firm. Go ahead, keep talking about the national thing, but I want to come back to that.
Yeah, and so we'll provide that limited assistance across Canada, and we've found a way to do it in a scalable way because we're not boots on the ground lawyers in most of those provinces. So we're not going to go to court for you. We're not going to meet you one-on-one. We're not going to be in a physical room assisting you with a negotiation. And part of the reality is our sort of avatar client is lower income, lower net worth than a traditional law office. I was at the 2019 CleoCon in San Diego, and they had they release that legal trends report every year, and one of the stats that stood out to me was about 80% of people with legal problems not going to lawyers, which was crazy to me. I thought,
yeah, that's nuts.
Here is a massive, for the entrepreneur in me is saying, here's a massive opportunity. Here's a bunch of people who need to eat, and there's no restaurant out there that will serve them. just make a restaurant that will serve them.
Right.
And so I wanted to, initially I was like, how can I create almost like a TurboTax or an H&R Block that will handle things, help the masses so that they're not stuck in this shroud of uncertainty and hopelessness? How can I help them without having to charge for an hour of my time, and to make it more scalable so I can help as many people through this as possible? And that's sort of what we unraveled a few years ago, was the cross Canada assistance with that.
That's cool. It's the AI stuff is interesting because I think, like, I mean, you can correct me if you see it differently. I feel like a lot of lawyers are trying to hide the ball on AI stuff right now. Like, they don't necessarily want their clients to know that they're using it because it somehow cheapens the legal services. But you're kind of out front with it.
And I feel like there's a serious concern with that, and I think there will be a reckoning at some point, because and I've said this in a lot of presentations, where if you're still charging an hourly rate, and let's say you're drafting this document, an agreement that used to take you 4 hours and you'd charge $1,000 for it, now you can do it in 15 minutes because you're leveraging AI, but you're still charging $1,000 for it and billing by the hour. That's fraud. That is criminal. I don't think I would like to see someone argue how that is not criminal. If you're not,
and I think a lot of the ethics opinions reflect your position. Yeah,
I think you've got to be transparent with this stuff, because the public, for one, you look at knowledge work, that gap between what we know and what the public knows is shrinking very, very quickly. And I think with every Claude release, you're gonna, or OpenAI release, or whoever release, you're just gonna see that gap narrowing more and more. And you're not going to be able to hide that stuff. And for one, you shouldn't be hiding it. I think other research has shown that clients want their lawyers to be using AI. And I think there will get to a point where clients will be refusing to go to certain lawyers who are not using and harnessing these tools.
I think that is probably going to be the case. Yeah, it's probably starting to become the case right now. Let me ask you what might be a related question. Like, I talked to a lot of family law attorneys across the North America, and it seems like this is one of the hardest places to find associates, supervising attorneys. Like, it's really hard to find good family law attorneys. So A, do you see that in your practice? And then B, like, is there a world in which AI helps with that as well, so you don't need as much staff to process through legal cases?
I think what it boils down to is a lot of lawyers a lot of law firms, especially traditional law firms, are confused on what they're actually looking for. So when we talk about the segmentation, when I was running a traditional practice, I had a traditional practice for about 5 years. And when I was an associate in a bigger practice before that, your ideal associate could market themselves, was a master networker, knew the law, could sell themselves when they were in a consult with clients, that they could solve the problem, could do the law, they could manage the tech, they'd manage the file, manage their staff, build business. What else? Oh, they could bill, they could collect. Those are two different things. Yeah. And so you're looking, so we're trying to find this person who can do 18 different jobs. But then when we turn the magnifying glass back, I was like, shit, I am only competent at like 6 of those things. Thankfully, they're like the legal aspects. Like, they're not one that I'll get. If I was not competent at delivering legal services, that would be an issue.
Yes.
And that's when I identified, okay, I need to segment these roles. So in terms of billing, I don't want a lawyer who knows how to bill, because I want to build an engine that can do that for, they don't have to worry about them. So they're not fit. Track their time. I don't want a lawyer who can go out and market themselves, because for one, they never went to school for that area. I can hire someone who's way more capable at doing that, who won't demand a lawyer's salary. And so
right, and cheaper.
exactly. And I feel like that's the first issue, is when you're looking for an attorney, you're looking for an all-in-one. And I think it's almost impossible to find. Second, when you're looking for a family attorney, you are looking for someone who actually likes what they do. If it's just a paycheck for you, and when I entered the practice, there were lawyers who were practicing family law because it was a paycheck, and they did a disservice to everybody. They did a disservice to their clients, to themselves, to the court, to the lawyers on the other file, to the person on the other file, the other spouse that was on the other side. And thankfully, I see you're getting more people who are practicing the area because they're actually passionate about it. I discovered my passion for family law is rooted way back to my parents' divorce. They went through a messy separation. I went through a separation in law school. So I'm passionate about helping people so that they don't fuck up their kids, so that they can get through this and they don't lose half a decade or a decade of their lives going through the shit, where they can actually get through it, move on to another chapter. Relationships end for whatever reason. You're still parents. You still have to figure this stuff out, and your kids need you. Get through that so that you can get back to being as good of a parent as you can.
That's a great take on that. All right, I got one more question for you, totally separate from what we've talked about this thus far. As a true entrepreneur, you're also working on a virtual receptionist platform, right?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it's been live at our office since December. I've partnered with a couple developers and entrepreneurs in Toronto. So they already had this platform, not for legal. And so I've been building it for legal, and sort of using my office as a bit of a incubator, as a test case. It has been phenomenal for us. We were ready to roll out all these other agents and essentially have it's called Simone Agentic.
Yeah.
And then
we're talking like AI virtual reception, not people.
If you call my office right now, the only way to get a hold of anyone at my office is through this AI reception. None of my lawyers, none of my team have direct lines, and that's largely tied to research. Gloria Mark did some research suggesting that every interruption, especially when you're in a flow or in flow, takes you 22 minutes off. It'll take you 22 minutes to get back to that. Just an interruption.
Yep.
Well, we've turned notifications off. We can't get reached by other lawyers or our clients or anybody. We're in this sort of dome of concentration.
Got to get into the flow state.
Exactly. And so that's what this AI receptionist helps us with. Previously, we played around with a bunch of other live voice reception services, and all of them. I won't name them, but and they were good. They served the task and the purpose, but they were still fairly expensive, and there were inconsistencies. So
we get a different person picking up every time, potentially.
Exactly.
It's really hard. Yeah. And
this is like, I can design exactly how I want it. I can make tweaks here and there and continually improve this. So it's going to be better after every single call. And so that was the goal. And then all of these releases through, I mean, OpenClaw came out. You've got all of these plugins for Claude. You've got Agentic AI. When I started in July, when we started this company in July 2025, it was like, okay, not many people are in the space. Now it's flooded. Yeah. And so now it's
now everyone
has me revisiting. Do I want to sell Agentic to lawyers in a space where everybody is selling Agentic to lawyers?
Right.
Or do I just building what I'm building?
To your point, which I think is interesting. You're a lawyer. I think when lawyers hear like legal tech, they're like, great, now I'm going to get price gouged because I'm a lawyer. And like, it's going to be the same shit that anyone else could use as a software. So when you're like, I wanted to tweak this so that it was built for a law firm, like, what does that mean for you in that realm?
Yeah, that's been my biggest criticism from starting Evolve.
Yeah.
I've had the sort of attitude that legal tech is going to be exponential the price for a fractional the actual function. And that was, I think it exists largely because a lot of lawyers are a little worried to go outside of the legal tech realm. They figure, hey, if you're a legal tech company, surely you've factored all these things in.
Everything's got to be confidential and secure, I think, at the top level is what they're worried about.
Yeah. And so I think there's that opportunity for now. But now you've got all these general companies starting to wade into that territory. And I'd be terrified. And like I said, thankfully,
I would be
too heavily invested in Simone Agentic, because if I had all my eggs in that basket, I'd be terrified right now. I'd be thinking, oh my God.
I would be shitting my pants over Claude if I was a legal tech company.
Yeah.
Because
Mike OSS,
why wouldn't I just use that to run my law firm?
Yeah, no, exactly. And there's a lawyer out of LA, Helen Fan. I don't know if you followed her at all, who ran a law firm with OpenClaw for 100 days, just as an experiment. I'm like, the whole thing could be agentic. You don't need a person.
I tell people all the time, if I was starting a law firm tomorrow, I'd probably run it in Claude. Claude and Microsoft 365 is probably what I would have.
No question.
But what a time to be alive. We could talk for an hour, but I got to cut it. Heaven's going to kill me if I don't stop the interview. Thank you for hanging out, doing this segment. Will you come back for one last part of the podcast?
That's actually the only reason I came, is for the next part of the podcast.
Excellent. We'll be right back, everybody. What a great answer. Welcome back, everybody. It's the Counter Program. It's a podcast within a podcast. This is a conversational space where we can address usually unrelated topics that I want to explore at a greater depth with my guests. Expect no rhyme and very little reason. Beau, welcome back.
Thank you. So excited for this part.
It's one of my favorite segments, which has like a Boston area twist. So, Bukowski Tavern in Boston, which I don't know if you get a chance to visit it when you were in Boston this last time around, but we should go next time if you didn't.
Yes, I'm in.
They have a wheel where you spin the wheel, and that dictates what drink you buy, and you buy whatever drink shows up on the wheel. As I've said a few times, I took Evan there the last time he was out in Boston, and he got like 3 non-alcoholic beers in a row. So very bad B for Evan. So we do this Wheel of Justice segment where we just spin a wheel and ask whatever question comes up. But, Beau, I want to do a little twist for you. We're calling this Wheel of Justice Canada edition. Only Canadian-related questions. I'm very excited.
Perfect.
So I think we'll be able to get through about 6 or so. We got 12 on the wheel. We like to deploy a little randomness here. I don't know what I'm going to be asking you about. So Evan, if you would like to spin the wheel, now we will get our first category that I'll ask Beau about. We'll see how we do here. Wrap up. Our first category is wrap up. Okay, this is a good one. I don't know if you're going to be biased from a Canadian perspective here, but do you have Drake or Kendrick in the big rap debate?
I have Kendrick, and the reason why.
Do you feel like a traitor?
I don't, because and I have a lot of love for Toronto. I have a lot of friends in Toronto, but
yes,
Toronto has traditionally treated itself as the center of the universe. And so
I like this.
Anywhere outside of Toronto is the rest of Canada as far as Torontonians are concerned. And so I don't necessarily have an allegiance to Drake or Kendrick, but so I'm just doing this music style. I'm going with Kendrick.
You can judge this on the merits. Yes. I think that's a fair way to play it. I I feel like Kendrick just eviscerated Drake.
Oh,
I don't have any I'm not a big Drake guy. I never was even beforehand. My son loves Drake, which I like. I'm like, why?
I'm a Tupac fan
too.
And I felt I was really offended by what Drake did by bringing Tupac into the beef. Like that went too far.
Are you back all the way to Digital Underground, Tupac?
Oh yeah, Humpty Hump.
Okay, I got to ask you a question. Do you remember when Digital Underground did the soundtrack for a Dan Aykroyd movie, and they had this single called "Same Song"?
I know the same song, and that's that Tupac's first appearance is in Same Song, I think.
I think so. I think that's right.
Yeah.
One of I think like one of the more under discovered rap tracks. That's a great song. But the movie. I forget the name of the movie, but it was a terrible Dan Aykroyd movie, and it made no money.
I did not know it.
So that's why I kind of lost
there was
to
that
history.
Canadian connection there too.
We're all about Wheel of Justice Canada today. Evan, let's spin the wheel. Let's get another category here. This is why I love this segment, because we can just like sticky situation. This could be problematic. Sticky situation. Let me find this one. This is at the top of my list. Okay. Canada has a strategic maple syrup reserve to help regulate global maple syrup pricing, which is actually a real thing. Beau, if you could have your own strategic reserve of anything, what would it be?
Oh, wow.
Could be maple syrup. You could have your own strategic reserve.
I think it would be maple syrup. Like, I like our strategy of you can't eat gold. You can't spread gold on pancakes. I'm going to stick with the Canadian strategy of maple syrup.
Were you aware of this? I had no idea this was a thing.
I want to say I've heard of this. I think, I don't know if I was aware that it was treated as a reserve in the sense, but I know it's big business in the East.
I usually, I was thinking like strategic oil reserve, sure. But maple syrup is like, that's the real deal. I love a good maple syrup as well. Do you have a favorite maple syrup? Like either type or company?
Yeah, I'm a massive Costco fan. I'm a massive fan of their ethos.
Who doesn't love Costco?
Kirkland brand maple syrup, I think has it for me.
How much are the hot dogs at Costco in Canada?
$1.49 with water or a pop.
What a deal. Love it. All right. Let's spin the wheel. Question number 3. What'll come up? I don't know. We've had a couple of good ones so far. I mostly left out legal specific questions because I thought it would be boring. Oh, outside Providence. Okay. A little play on words here. In your opinion, what's the shittiest Canadian province?
Oh, what is idiot? Oh, I'm about to make some enemies here.
I could have done the best, but it was interesting to me before you were talking. You're like, oh, the Maritimes. Like those are all lumped together.
I'm born and raised in Alberta. I love it.
Yep.
It's home, but man, dude, some wacky things happen out of Alberta. Including like right now they're wanting to separate or they aren't.
Oh, there's
a small
really?
sector. And like, the craziest, I think I've heard you did this once on the Rump Roast way back when, Florida Man.
Yeah. Yes. Is there Alberta Man? Is that a thing?
Yeah, I think you could do Alberta Man. I think you could.
Oh my God.
Substitute Florida and Alberta.
You're coming back for that one. You know that, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So lot of wild shit going down in Alberta. I had no idea.
Yeah, I mean, it was sort of the ground zero for the trucker convoy during COVID. Without diving into the politics of that, COVID's in the past. Leave it in the past.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'm down for that.
Yeah, it's some wild stuff can happen out of Alberta.
I'm learning so much today. All right, Alberta. All right, Evan, let's spin it again. Question number 4. I'm getting good Canadian intel. How many provinces are there? Like 11?
Yes.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
I always so there used to be a Yukon territory, but is that no longer a thing? Like that's like Nunavut now, or am I right?
No,
Or am I
so
wrong on that?
there used to be two territories. There was Yukon and Northwest Territories, and essentially Nunavut is part of the Northwest Territories because Northwest Territories was massive.
Oh.
It was basically the
Yeah.
entire north,
Because
apart from the chunk that's Yukon.
no one lives up there, right?
No, it's
For the most
it's
part.
very hard to live up there. Like it's cold. It's can't grow much.
Leading us directly into Horton. Here's the Halifax, which is our next category. Why is Tim Hortons coffee so preferred in Canada? And is it better than Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks?
It was. Once upon a time, I think it was great. And it's it's no longer Canadian. So it doesn't get my patronage on the basis that I got to support Canada because it's American conglomerates. I think it's a group that owns Burger King.
Tim Hortons is now owned by Americans?
Yeah. Yeah. Hey,
that's
we have
tragic.
a problem. There was a book called Why Mexicans Don't Drink Molson, I think it was called. And it talks about how in Canada, we just sell off all of our companies. So we don't really grow them.
That's tragic.
Like even
we fuck everything up, as you've seen.
But you do it in a
we fucked up Tim Hortons.
You do it profitably.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And so I would say I almost prefer McDonald's coffee to Tim Hortons coffee now.
Oh my God! Wow, that is
we don't
a
have
hot take.
Dunkin'.
I never would have expected that.
We don't have Dunkin' where I am now, but there's rumors we're getting one. I'm excited for that. But yeah,
when you get a Dunkin', you just let me know. I'll make sure I get you one of the tracksuits so you can wear it to the Dunkin'. Have you seen the tracksuits?
I have not seen the tracksuits.
Oh, go on an internet deep dive after this. Like they had the Super Bowl commercial with Ben Affleck in the tracksuit. It's like pink and orange, and you can buy them.
Oh,
I think they're probably available now.
I remember that. What was that commercial with Al?
The Dunkinks.
The Al Cappuccino. Al Pacino was in that commercial.
Was he? He might have been. He might have been. They had a bunch of people in it.
Yeah. Anyways.
So my last question is like related to this one. We got two more to go. So if Tim Hortons is no longer the Canadian coffee choice, what's the best Canadian coffee?
I like the small shops. I love a small coffee shop. I love just walking around, going to a mom and pop shop. Maybe they've got 2, 3, 4 locations. For one, they love coffee. That's why they do what they do. And everything from the setting, pricing, coffee, I find that a better experience.
Okay. I love this. Support small businesses, everybody. Let's spin the wheel. We got 2 left. What comes up? I don't know. I'm always impressed, Evan, that you stay attuned to the wheel spinning. Like he's right on it. Can we have some applause for Evan? Okay, catch up with holding. Oh, this is an interest. This is one I have like real concerns about. What is the deal with ketchup chips?
Yeah, have you had them?
No, they look disgusting. Are they actually tasty?
See, I think you've got to go into it with a beginner's mindset, as if you've never had a chip before. If you have a ketchup chip,
okay,
we're
getting deep here.
Ketchup chip, because that's when we all got hooked. We all got hooked before we knew what ketchup was, before we knew what chips were. And once we had one, that's when they hooked us.
Out of the womb, you're eating ketchup chips.
Basically, yeah, exactly. Ketchup formula. They
these are like really popular in Canada, and they don't sell them at all in the United States.
Yeah,
really.
and I haven't known why, because I had a lot of foreign student friends throughout university from Mexico and Europe and all these other places, non-English speaking places. And they would be like, I don't need any of my clothes. I can get clothes where I'm from. I'm packing my suitcase. And so it's not just Canadians who love these things. It's basically anyone who tries them with the open mind that falls in love.
I guess I should try them.
Now,
then. What do they taste? Is it like, do they taste like ketchup, or is it like a different type of flavor?
There's two very distinct flavors of ketchup. There's the Lay's flavor of ketchup, and it's not really that sweet. And then there's the Old Dutch flavor of ketchup. Both are going to be completely different experiences. I recommend the Old Dutch experience of ketchup.
Let's spin it one more time. All right, last question. Tune in. Tune in is our last Canadian question. Okay. This is a good one to end it on, I think. Beau, if I had one thing to do in Saskatoon, I'm only there for one day, I can only do one thing. What would it be?
You got to qualify that with when you're coming. If you're coming between June and August, you're going for a walk by the river. It's very, very beautiful.
Okay.
If you're going between September and May, you're going to go for a polar plunge outside.
Oh my God, really? Do people actually do that?
I do it. So I do it because I
Really?
Oh man, there's nothing better for like mental health, quick state reset. Like you're just, because they talk about presence, you will never be more present than you will in a tub of freezing cold water.
Wow. So you've done do you do it is this like an annual thing? Are you in the river? Are you in a tub? Like, how do you do your polar plunges?
So
this seems like a very Canadian thing to do.
I would probably do one a few times a week, just for a few minutes.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
It was, but
so now, you're a cold plunge guy.
Yeah, but you're looking at me like I'm crazy. So does everybody here. So don't think that that's a Saskatchewan.
Okay. I didn't know if this is a thing. Like I'm the one guy in Saskatchewan who doesn't do cold plunges. Like, what's wrong with that fucking guy?
We have beautiful paths, a beautiful river valley. I love going for walks as much as I can, and that's what I would recommend.
Beau, thank you for coming on today. You're very enlightening in terms of flat fees, family law practice, and I learned a lot about Canada. Please come back sometime.
Thank you so much. I'll come back anytime.
Thanks for our guest. That was Beau Atkins, who is the CEO of Evolve Family Law. To learn more about Beau and Evolve, visit evolvelaw.ca, evolvelaw.ca. CA? Canadian URL, evolvelaw.ca. Now, because I'll always be a 90s kid who regretfully did not see Pulp Fiction in the theaters, but his true passion is burning CDs for anyone who would listen. I'm now just doing the modern version of that, which is creating Spotify playlists for every podcast episode that I record, where the songs are tangentially related to an episode topic. For this week's playlist, we're going to Vegas in our minds. We've got the Viva Las Vegas playlist, and it's brought to you by DraftKings, because they sponsor everything, right? So, I mean, it's entirely possible that we will be sponsored by DraftKings by the time this podcast comes out. Stranger things have happened. Perhaps we should parlay it? Join us next time when I order up a buffalo chicken calzone live on air. No, wait. That's a terrible idea.